What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam. How serious are you about your Etsy shop? Would you consider yourself an amateur or a professional? In this jam, we look at 14 different opportunities for self-reflection, which will help you have a better understanding of yourself and take your shop to the next level. What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam, the podcast where we have spiffalicious conversations about serious topics. I am Gordon from Marmalead.
And I am Richie from Marmalead. And if you don't know what Marmalead is all about, then you gotta go check it out at marmalead.com. That is marmalade.com. And it is the best Etsy SEO and market research tool for serious sellers. So if you are an Etsy seller that is serious about your shop, go check it out. If you're not serious about your shop, do not check it out. Stay far away. Stay hanging out in those forums. All right. So, Gordon, what do we have going on today?
We've got a conversation today about whether or not you are an amateur or a professional. Not you specifically. Anybody specifically.
Wait, not me?
Amateur or professional.
Not me specifically, or not them specifically?
It could be, right? This was an article that a friend had kind of passed my way, and I found it pretty interesting. It's from Farnham Street blog. So if you haven't heard of that website, go check it out because they've got some other articles out there too that I was just kind of glancing at and looked pretty interesting. It's FARNAM streetblog.com. And this is called The Difference Between Amateurs and Professionals. But I think, drop any word in there, if you will, like hobbyist, full-time Etsy seller, dabbler, entrepreneur, whatever you want to throw in there. Someone who's not as serious about doing something, or who hasn't really achieved, like, you're not a professional at what you're doing. You don't have everything super down pat yet. And it kind of compares and contrasts those two things. And now when I read it, it kind of makes you ask some pretty good questions of yourself, I think. And that's one of the reasons I think we wanted to talk about it in the jam, is because it's a good opportunity to kind of maybe kick yourself into high gear. If you find yourself more aligned with, what the article calls an amateur, but you aspire to be more professional. You want to take your shop to the next level. You want to be doing Etsy full time. You want to, maybe even keep your side hustle as a side hustle, but be more serious about it, make more money. And you have some goals set out for yourself that you want to achieve.
Yes, I think the context is important. Like, it's, and sometimes people look at amateurs like, you do it and don't get paid, and professional, you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good way of thinking of it too. And so what the article really boils down to is they had a bunch of bullet points, a bunch of different comparison points. And we kind of picked like 14 of them that we thought were pretty relevant for Etsy sellers, whether it's, handmade, one of a kind, vintage, whatever you're doing on Etsy. And the whole goal really, as we go through these things, is to kind of just spur some, self-reflection and thought, and give these things some consideration, and think to yourself, am I doing the best job of this? Is there room for improvement here? Right. Like, and maybe some of them, you can't tackle all of them, obviously, but maybe some of them are really going to resonate with you, and you'll walk away from this thinking, you know what, there's some things I can focus on and improve on here.
Makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
I think at any level you're trying to get to the higher level and kind of trying to refine, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're not, I mean, if you do just do Etsy as a hobby, maybe you only do it during the holidays. Maybe you have a full-time job that you absolutely love, and Etsy's kind of a hobby for you. You might not be super into this episode of Etsy Jam. Maybe you don't want to kick things into high gear, and maybe you're super happy where you are. That's totally fine too. But for people who, are interested in taking a step forward, this is something that I think you can get a lot out of.
Yeah, keep in mind though, I mean, even if you do something as a hobby, right? So there are a lot of things I'm sure you do for fun that you enjoy on the side, but you're not trying to make them a full career. Like, you play an instrument, but you're not trying to be like a touring professional full-time rock star, right? But at the same time, every time you pick it up and want to do something with, every time you want to play, you're probably doing so for fun, but also you probably enjoy getting better at it. So
Yeah,
you can use
that's true.
the same type of introspection and whatnot, and just kind of the same mentality, so that the things you, even hobbies that you do, a couple hours a week, like it's still fun if you improve on them. Things aren't very fun if you never improve.
Yeah, that's a good point. All
Cool.
right, so you want to kick into this?
Yeah, man, let's do
Do
it.
this?
Yeah.
All right. So the we'll try to go through these because there's kind of there's a fair amount here, but so the first one, and again, this site compares it with amateurs and professionals. Drop whatever term you want in there. We're just going to kind of stick with that because that's how they had written it up. But feel free to in your head drop in your own terms. So the first one they have is that amateurs show up inconsistently and professionals show up every day.
Showing up. It's important.
Some would say it's 9/10 of success.
There you go. It's a good one. Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of these things get stated in different ways, but there's a lot of consistency to it. To these different types of I don't know, tips or suggestions.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think, like, I don't know, think about, like, they say, like, oh, it's like riding a bike, you never forget, right? But I don't know the last time you were on a bike, but when time passes, yes, I can still ride a bike, but it's not as comfortable as when you've been riding the bike pretty
Mm-hmm.
consistently. When you
Mm-hmm.
see people that are really comfortable on a bike, you can tell they do so very
Mm-hmm.
consistently. And you can tell when people haven't done something in a while. They're a little shakier, they don't have any of the confidence. I think showing up, I mean, when you haven't done something in a while, you get rusty pretty quick.
Yep. Second one, amateurs focus on the short term, professionals focus on the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of wired for short-term gratification in general, but obviously there's a lot to gain from looking a little bit beyond, which is always tough
Yeah.
because a lot of people are like, okay, gotta live in the moment, which
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of, but you can't live in the moment at the expense of, you know, the next moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can totally live in the moment, but don't expect to be making huge strides forward if that's all you do, right? And you make a good point too about we're kind of conditioned for the short term. I mean, everything is very immediate. Notifications on your phone, social media, commercials on TV being short. Everything is really kind of geared towards immediacy. And it's easy to get caught up in that. It's easy to, look at your Etsy stats for the last day or the last week and put a lot of weight on those when you might get a whole lot more of focusing long term, looking at the last month, the last quarter, the last year, and not getting too worked up about little short chunks.
Yes. Yeah, even traffic could be a short versus long term type thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are very focused on that, like, front of the funnel kind of thing. Like, I gotta jam a bunch of traffic in here today, short term, short term, short term, caring about that. Not really caring about, are those people over the next couple days actually going to do something about it? That's kind of the
Yep.
longer term. Or even if it's the same day, it's kind of a hyper short term versus
Yep.
like later in the day, long term.
Yep. I think one of the other things that this kind of alludes to is a sense of measuring things. If you're focusing on short term versus long term, it's kind of assumed that you're looking at some sort of measurement of something or other. And I think that's also important to remember, as somebody in e-commerce, um, you need to be measuring things because how else do you know when things are working and when things aren't working?
Yes. And importantly, measuring a big enough sample size that it actually matters.
There you go.
You
Measure
know,
my one sale in the last hour. It's looking good, man.
right. I haven't had views in the last, hour. Like, sky
Right.
is falling. That's
Yeah.
probably not the case.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. It's not the case for us.
Amateurs have a goal. Professionals have a process.
I
What
like
do you think
that
they
one.
mean process?
Well, goals, like, okay, I'm going to make as much as my day job so I can leave my day job in a year, right? And it's
There
like,
you go.
that's a nice goal. But unless you actually have a real structured way of achieving that, a
Yeah.
process, something repeatable, something that you can combine with that showing up every day, then it's just a nice thing to throw out there, you know? Like, I have a goal that it's going to be sunny every day for the next year. Okay, awesome. Like, how are you going to make that happen? Well, it's a
Yeah.
goal. I wrote it down. It's on my vision board, so it's going to happen.
Right.
Well, that's a nice start.
Yeah.
Obviously, like a process needs a goal, but a goal on its own is not going to just fulfill itself. But a process, something you can show up every day and, you know, move those parts around knowing that this process actually leads to the goal. There you go.
Yeah. I like that. Amateurs think they are good at everything. And I would add in too here that amateurs could think that they're bad at everything. They could be very negative about themselves too. It doesn't have to be, this positive outlook here. But the flip side of that is the professionals understand their circles of competence.
Yes.
So,
Circles of competence. So
yeah.
that'd be like the things you excel at versus the things that you're really not the best at those. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
That's okay. Yeah, there's another one later on down here that kind of relates back to that. Here we go. I'll throw this one up right after the one that we just did then. Because it does kind of relate to that. But yeah, and so I think one of the things that they're saying in here too, is that, I mean, not only obviously amateurs can be kind of arrogant and think that they have, oh, I know how to do everything, I'm all set with all of this stuff, but you could also be, negative about yourself and feel like you just can't achieve anything.
So true.
Or that you're not really good at anything. And you can't really get caught up in that. And neither one of those things are really true. There's nobody who's good at absolutely everything, or nobody who's absolutely horrible at everything either. Everyone has their own things that they're better at than other things, and things that they're not as good at than other things. And I think that, having a good understanding of those things is super important.
Absolutely. And yeah, just like you said, I think it's a myth and it's a trick that somebody is good at everything. That's why they have like that, jack of all trades, master of none. But for whatever
Yeah.
reason, we kind of, there's that somewhat like the derogatory phrase of like one trick pony, right? Oh, it's a one trick pony. It only does this one thing really well. But it's also really hard to do that one thing really well. There are
Yeah, it's a pony trick.
right.
I don't know any pony tricks.
And some people, they're involved in different things, and it looks like they're very talented in many ways, and maybe it kind of all falls like they're really good at utilizing that circle of competence, right? So there are some like actors and actresses that are great at what they do, their craft, acting, but they're also involved in a lot of different organizations, but it could all be kind of part of that same circle of competence, right? Like they have that charismatic, entertaining, personable flair that lets them do really good at like helping with these causes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they're amazing at everything.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they're doing the math behind the scenes to, make sure that organization's finances are in order,
Right. Exactly. And they're not like, hey, I'll be the lawyer, I'll head
Right.
up the legal team. Some of them maybe. I don't know what their backgrounds are. It depends where they came from, right? But nonetheless, circles of competence.
Yeah. And so the next one that kind of fits into this is that amateurs focus on identifying their weaknesses and improving them, where professionals focus on their strengths and finding people who are strong where they are weak. And I think we've talked about this in other jams before too. I think it was our New Year's jam, actually. We talked about this book called Strengths Finders. And if you haven't checked that out yet, I highly recommend it. It's a really quick read. And it basically goes through and helps you identify those circles, that they're talking about earlier, the circles of competence that you have and what your strengths are. And the focus of the book isn't on like, okay, man, like here's your strengths. Now everything else is a weakness. You need to work on those things. No, it's like, here's your strengths. And now here's how you can develop those things. Now that you understand what they are and know how you can basically like use them in different situations.
And there are a lot of things you can ignore too, which is a big part of that book too. Like they're That book, basically, one of the things they say is, here are your strengths, focus on making these better, and don't worry about your weaknesses so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I know that here it says, find people who are strong where you are weak. But I think the caveat is, if you really need it at all.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't even need all the things you think you need, right? Like, oh, I'm weak over here. I need to find somebody. Do I? Or could we just not do that thing?
Yeah, no, that's a really valid point.
Yeah. Like, how important is this thing really?
Yeah.
I'm not good at it, but how important is it really in the grand scheme of things and what I need to do or what the business needs to do?
Yeah.
Because it might just not be that important even.
Yeah, that's a great point. We talked with Rachel last week from Indigo Tangerine, and she made a point of mentioning how she doesn't have her own personal website. Now, admittedly, she says she's not the most tech savvy person in the world, so this is probably not one of her circles of strength. Could she find someone to build her a site? Absolutely. She could go out there and do that. She might know somebody, or she could even hire somebody from somewhere to build a site for her. But that's something that she hasn't put a lot of weight on and has just kind of decided, that's okay. I don't really have to do that right now.
Yeah, it's a weakness that's not that important of a weakness.
Yep. Next one, amateurs take feedback from amateurs. Professionals know which feedback they should pay attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of like when we say don't ask your friends and family and stuff like that if they like a particular product or they like these things, or like, everyone, as soon as you say like, hey, I'm going to start this business or whatever, everyone comes out of the woodwork to give you business advice, especially people that have never had one or like are not doing what you do.
Dude, that sounds
right?
a lot like parenting.
It is a lot like parenting. Yes. But yeah, everyone wants to solicit feedback on that stuff.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to politely ignore it.
Yeah.
Because it's not who you want to take the advice from.
Yeah.
So people have mentors. And one of the things that, one of the pieces of advice I've heard about for finding the perfect mentor is the people you want to follow listen to are the people that are like a level above where you are. Right? So there's still what is the word there? Still context, still relevant, they still have enough memory of what it was like at the stage you're at.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're way down here and someone else is way up here, you're kind of in like the infancy stage of whatever you're working on, and they're in like just the retirement stage of whatever you're working on. There was a lot of, looking back, like, I think I did this or that, but you kind of lose it. Whereas if it was like, oh, I was at that level, a year or two ago.
Yeah.
I was going through the same growing pains. I was going through the same things. I didn't have a process for that yet. Or, I had the same issues. I feel like that's important. Like, context is really important.
Yeah.
So just always, pay attention to who you're listening to.
Yeah.
And who you're getting feedback from. And back to the product thing, it's like, if someone says like, I don't know, I wouldn't really buy that product like that. And it's like, have you ever bought, are you even in the market for, have you ever been in the market for this kind of thing? And if it's no, then it's like, well, opinion's completely irrelevant. Or like, oh yeah, I love that. Like, I would totally buy that. And it's like, check please. And if they're like, oh no, that's hypothetical. And it's like,
no, I would buy
opinion irrelevant. I totally would if I need that thing.
Yeah.
But if I don't need that thing.
Yeah, and I think kind of a hidden thing in here that I don't think it really gets mentioned later on, but in the same vein as feedback, I think that you could also say that amateurs don't do as good of a job as professionals in taking constructive criticism from people. So if you're thinking about customer reviews on your products and things like that, or feedback from customers in general through an email or Etsy chat or whatever have you, sometimes that kind of stings. Like, people will say things and they don't always deliver it in the nicest way, or they're just nasty sometimes too, right? I think that sellers who are more, I do this full time, I'm really serious about my shop, they're gonna try to take that in a different way than someone who might just kind of dabble in Etsy, and try to focus on, okay, what's going on in this feedback? Is there anything of merit here? Does this person know what they're talking about? You know, have I heard something similar from somebody else? Is this something that maybe like, I know they're kind of being nasty and saying this one thing, but can I actually use some of this? Like, is there some value in here that I can look at, maybe, you know, how I'm packaging things, or maybe something arrived broken, and I can look back at, okay, you know, maybe I could package this a little bit differently here so that won't happen in the future and things like that. Now, yeah, there's nasty people out there, but I would be willing to bet that not every single one of your reviewers is nasty about stuff. So, you know, it helps to be able to kind of take that feedback, maybe like let it sit for a day or two, and then come back to it and look at it and say like, all right, now what can I get out of this that's like positive and help me move forward in the right direction, instead of just getting angry and frustrated and dismissive about it.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Next one up, amateurs value isolated performance, professionals value consistency.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one time I did that one thing so great. It was awesome.
Yeah, I do.
Good, me too.
I wrote it down. Yeah. No, it's totally true. It's totally true, man. And again, I think this kind of goes back to that, like, measuring things, right? How do you know about performance if you're not measuring your performance? But even bigger than that, they're talking about, you know, one-off events. Like, this was a really great week in sales, but that's, you know, the other 51 weeks weren't. So it's don't get caught up in that, right? Like, don't pat yourself on the back over little isolated pockets if you're looking at, you know, your long term again versus short term, and you're not able to consistently deliver at that same level. Now, if you can go back and learn from that and say like, hey, this week I totally killed it. What's different? Like, what did I do differently this week than these other weeks? You know, maybe I was more on top of my convos, or whatever have you, inside of talking with customers and stuff like that, and people appreciated that. I don't know what it is for you personally. That's where it goes back to measuring. But yeah, I don't think that you can really get caught up in little pockets of awesomeness if it's not a consistent thing.
Agreed. I mean, sometimes you get a cold, sometimes you get the flu, sometimes like things happen. You know, does that isolated performance, good or bad, in that case bad, does that define you? No, it doesn't. That is a rough patch. And sometimes, you know, a lot of those things are out of your control too, but other times, you know, like, things are out of your control. Like, man, like what was it? Some of those name servers and whatnot went down some months ago. Remember? And like,
oh yeah,
half the country couldn't access websites. You know, that will screw things up. It's pretty out of your control.
Yeah.
You know, that's not your keywords. That's not your copy. That's not, you know, those things. That's a disruption in the internet.
Yeah.
The eclipse. I'd be willing to bet. Eclipse was yesterday, by the way. But you know, I'd be willing to bet that there wasn't a whole lot of e-commerce going on during the eclipse.
Yeah.
A lot of people were pretty preoccupied with that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't look at that one isolated day and be like, the sky's falling.
Yeah. Ancient empires might have, but we won't.
We will learn from that. They looked at that isolated performance, and that's why they are now
ancient.
Gone. They're ancient. They're gone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consistency won the day.
Amateurs give up at the first sign of trouble and assume their failures. Professionals see failures as part of the path to growth and mastery. That was a long one.
That is.
Yeah. And it was funny because when Richie and I were talking about this before the show, this goes back to, was it our first jam? Was it I feel like it was the very first jam.
I feel like it was the first, but I guess we talked about it and then didn't check.
My Google Doc only goes back to episode 3, so I'd have to go to the blog. Whichever one it was failing forward. And this is kind of exactly what we were talking about. We had a whole jam on that. We should have an entire jam on each one of these. We probably won't. But yeah, no, we were talking about failing forward and how, don't get caught up in the failures. The failures are opportunities to learn. And that's the most helpful way you can look at a failure. It's easy to get kind of disappointed by them and stuff like that. And that's totally normal and everything. But use them as opportunities for growth. Look at them and say, okay, why did that fail? Now, what can I do better next time so that doesn't happen?
Yes. Everything won't go well all the time.
Yeah. Unless you're insanely lucky.
Which I don't think you could be insanely lucky forever.
Unless you're super duper insanely lucky.
If that's the case, come in the gym and tell us your story.
Yeah, we want to hear it. We want to hear it.
Yeah.
We'll play rock, paper, scissors with you.
Ooh, I like that. I've never lost at rock, paper, scissors.
Nope. I always go with paper.
Is that how you win?
I don't know. It's luck.
Luck.
All right. Amateurs don't have any idea what improves the outcomes. Professionals do. And then kind of in the same vein as this one, amateurs think good outcomes are the result of their brilliance. Professionals understand when outcomes are the result of luck. Kind of like we were just talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
And again, I mean, this you can see the pattern here. Amateurs not having any idea of what improves the odds of achieving good outcomes. You get that by measuring things, by knowing which numbers are important to keep track of and keeping track of them. Otherwise, you're gonna have those weeks where I had an amazing week in sales, and I look back and I have no idea why it was so good, but it was good, so good. So yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
And then the next two are kind of related to each other also. Amateurs think that knowledge is power. Professionals pass on wisdom and advice. And amateurs focus on tearing other people down while professionals focus on making everyone better. And I think we see this a lot in at least our Facebook group. I don't know about the forums and other places on Etsy and stuff like that. Probably not as common, but I do think that the people in our group who understand what they're doing, have had success in the past with Etsy, are currently having success with Etsy. They are much more likely to help other people out in the group and jump in and give feedback. And it's awesome to see that kind of stuff happen. There's probably a lot of sellers out there who are of the mindset that knowledge is power. And, I'm just going to kind of lurk in these other groups and the forums and wherever and just kind of gather all of this knowledge. And I'm just going to make one awesome shop because after all, everyone else is my competitor. But it's night and day when you see a seller who's been successful and you see him every day on Facebook helping other sellers out. They just tend to do that. And it's awesome to see that happen a lot, especially in the Etsy community.
Yeah, it's a very helpful community.
And then the second part of that too is amateurs focus on tearing other people down. Professionals focus on making everyone better. It's easy too to kind of, when something doesn't quite go your way, get a little bit negative about things. Whether you're complaining about customers or Etsy or shipping providers or whatever have you, right? It's easy to fall into that trap. It tends to snowball. And we hear a lot of feedback from a lot of people in our group that, once you read something negative from someone else, it's kind of like, it puts like that idea in your head. And then you're taking a negative view of it. And people just don't tend to really like that. It just it starts to put you in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Avoid negativity. What you focus on expands. You start finding, negative things, and that's what ends up defining you, what you get more of. So,
yeah,
keep that in mind.
And then we've got amateurs blame others, professionals accept responsibility. It's really easy to blame other people. It's really easy when something goes wrong to point the finger and not look at yourself and how you are responsible for something, or maybe not even completely responsible for something, but maybe something you did is partially responsible for something. Um, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's even harder, I think, to admit it to other people when you finally figure something out that you think you might be partially responsible for. Uh, I don't think that, this is necessarily asking you to go that far with it, but internalize it, right? At least accept your own responsibility for something. And, figure out how that can again work to your advantage. It goes along the same lines as failures. And if you find that you are partially responsible for something, that's in a way it's a failure, but you can look at it and figure out how to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So, yeah.
Agreed.
And then the last one we've got here, amateurs stop when they achieve something. Professionals understand that the initial achievement is just the beginning. Yeah.
Nice. It's kind of that whole goals and process kind of thing, right? So, and I think you should have goals on your way to goals.
I think this one really leans into that idea really well.
Absolutely. It's like, hey, the process worked. Well, awesome. Like that is what you designed it for. Now, can we make it work a little better?
Yeah.
Right? Like everything kind of goes through that process. You start and then there's a refining of it.
Yeah. So let's say, I set a goal this year that my Etsy shop will, I'll make enough money this year with my Etsy shop that will pay for our family's summer vacation, well, okay, sweet. Yeah. And I hit that goal, right? I set myself up for success. It was a good sized goal. I wasn't coming up with this astronomical goal of, replacing my income and basically retiring from my full-time job and doing Etsy full-time. It was a smaller goal. I want to pay for a vacation. We're not talking about my salary here. So let's hit that. And I hit it, and that's awesome. Now, don't see that as like the end, like, boom, I'm done. I'm out, right? Mic drop. No, like that's the beginning. Like, what's your next goal after that? Pay for, my vacation. Like, you could make that your goal if you wanted to. Just throwing that out there. But it doesn't have to be. No, I mean, you could make it.
Doesn't have to be.
You could pay for 2 vacations or, whatever, but make it bigger, right? Take that next step. Like Richie was saying, like set your goals up so that they kind of fall in sequence with one another. You're not like gonna take your biggest, hugest, largest goal and like, boom, that's the one. It's like do or die, you're probably gonna end up disappointed because it's too large to tackle that. But if you pick a smaller one and you achieve it, like the next step isn't boom, done. The next step is, okay, what's the next thing? Like, how do I grow this, right? What's the next step from here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Growth. Constant growth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the big differences between amateurs and professionals where, sometimes when you set a goal and you achieve it, that's awesome, right? But sometimes people are done. They're like, okay, well, I figured it out and I did it. Like, next, I'm going to do something different.
If we're not getting better, what are we doing?
You could be getting worse.
There you go. That's true. But if you're not working at getting better at something, I guess you must just not be that into it. Right?
Yeah. You don't want to be a professional.
We're good at it. But in the context of the verbiage we're using, professional. Yeah.
And so that's it. Those are the tips that they had in this blog post. Like I said, there were a handful of other ones that in the interest of time we kind of cut out. But we'll throw the link in our blog post for this jam if you want to check out the rest of those straight from the source. And take a look at those yourself too. And in fact, reading through these might even be more helpful to you because it kind of allows you to pause and take that time to self-reflect and think about how well you're doing any one of these things, if there's room for improvement for you with any of these things, and so forth. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Shazam.
Shazam. All right.
And if you read through them all and you're like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. I'm a total professional. That's awesome. But I'd be willing to bet there aren't many people in that group, right? I mean, that's great if you fall into that category. But there's a lot of things here, and a lot of this really ratchets a lot of things up and really makes you stop and think like, oh man, like, you know, I'm not doing the best job of that I can, right? Like, oh man, you know, I'm doing a great job of these other things, but wow, I still really do get caught up in isolated performance and like looking at how I did in this one little situation. And I know I shouldn't do it, but I do know that I get caught up in that, right? So that's something that I can improve on a little bit. Or blaming others, that's an easy one too, right? It's easy to do that. It's easy when something happens to get in there and blame someone else. But to try to really accept some of the responsibility for things it's a good thing to do, but it's a difficult thing to do. Yeah.
Yes. Another growth opportunity.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
So yeah, check out the blog article. Check out that Strength Finders book. Share back with us when you find out what your strengths are. It'd be cool to know that from you guys. And what little, you know, what are your areas of competency? What are your circles of competence? Your areas of strength? It'd be cool. Let us know. success@marmalead.com.
That really came off nice and natural.
No, I'm serious. That makes me sad if it didn't sound natural. No,
maybe that was.
No, it really was. I'm curious, and it was honestly, like, I liked going through the book, and it was really fun. And I think it was informative. Some of the verbiage in there, like when they're describing, you know, an area of strength or whatever, it's not super like clear cut, and you kind of have to read through. Like, there's a little chapter on each one of them, so you kind of have to read through and get what are they really saying here? Like, what is this word that they're using to describe this thing? So you kind of have to do a little bit of digging into it. But again, it was a really short book. And a lot of it, like I said, there's chapters on each of the areas of strength. I don't think it's possible to be strong in all of the areas just due to the way that like their test is set up and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of chapters you don't even have to read. Yeah.
There you go. Even better. That's my favorite kind of book.
It's like a choose your own adventure kind of like you need to read chapters 6, 12, and 14.
Well, it's like having a checklist, but like the top 5 things are already checked off, and it's like, what?
There
I'm
you
halfway
go.
done?
Yeah.
Nice. Yay for me.
Yeah.
Killing it. I like that. That's why I like to put wake up at the first thing on my daily checklist.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at it like, boom, done.
You know, you laugh, but like there's times where I've intentionally broken things out on my checklist that I know I'm going to do like at the same time. You know, like record intro to Jam, upload Jam files. Well, I'm probably going to do those things at the same time back to back, but let's make them 2 separate things.
Hey, man, whatever works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're funny.
And then I'm like, bam, bam, check, check.
Checklist
right.
master. Awesome.
That's right. Feels good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what we
Good
got.
stuff. Go out there and get next
That's
level.
right. Amp it up. In
Amp
time for the holidays.
Yes.
Because they're going to sneak up.
Oh, man, they sure will.
Any closing thoughts?
I feel like these were pretty good. I feel like every one of these was a closing thought.
Yeah. No, I liked them too. I thought it was a good article. Again, we'll, I know I'm at least going to keep an eye on this blog in the future too. So, you might hear us recycle some of their content later on too, if there's another article that seems like it really applies. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
But enjoy.
Sounds good.
Till next time.
Next
Hopefully
time.
that gave you guys some opportunity for some good self-reflection. And we will catch you
Yes.
guys next time on Etsy Jam.